All right. Good morning. Oh, we have the one box clear. Oh. Hmm. Interesting. Okay. Well, we'll see if we stay alive here on the stream. OBS just some pretty weird stuff. Like we've got green on the stream, we've got sound going. Guess it's all right. It just wanted to like force stop on me there for a second, but figured itself out, and then the chat was behind real time, I guess, or it didn't clear the one boxes. Anyway, things up here. Actually, are we live? Or we're live, but we're on the title card, aren't we? No, Twitch here. So confused. Pretty interesting the delay. Okay, I mean, we're about as close as we usually get to live. It's weird. Almost there, sorry. Which video and audio is good? Can see hello view. Nice, thank you. Uvi over in the chat, on the chat, excuse me, on Twitch. Thanks for the heads up there. All right. Yeah, hello view. I won't be working on view here, although this is a sneak preview, I guess, of something that I am working on kind of in the background, is trying to learn the basics of view. I also have joined the, I'll say dark side for VS Code. I don't really think of it as light and dark except for the theme, and I do have dark theme. But I've grabbed VS Code, so I'm starting slowly but surely to try to figure out how to use that, just because I'm trying to follow some Vue tutorials, and the person teaching it is using VS Code, so I figured what better time to jump in than when I have somebody kind of showing me the ropes, at least, of how to do it in the context of what I'm trying to learn, which is Vue. I'll say, I'll show you what I hope to be able to do with this Vue knowledge. Really, the reason I'm trying to learn Vue, learn about Vue, is to be able to run this thing locally. EDU blocks, for folks that don't know, this is a one of the block programming languages. There's actually, I think, quite a few of these similar concepts out there. So this is one of them, edublocks.org, I think, yeah. So you can write programs with these blocks, and then this utility, edublocks.org, it has, I think, 3 or 4 different outputs. HTML, Python, and then the main reason how I became aware of this is it also supports CircuitPython. Where does it go here? It will show us. 5 things: Python 3, HTML, microbit, BBC device, and then CircuitPython and Raspberry Pi. So lots of different things that you can write your programs for, which I think is a really great idea for teaching folks kind of the basics of all of these different things. So I want to get to a point where I can actually effectively run that project and start tinkering on it locally, and it is made with Vue. So I'm trying to kind of take a crash course here on Vue and get up to speed. But that is not what I'll be doing on the stream. Actually quit that just so we have some more resources back for the rest of the system. This over here. What I am working on today on the stream is NeoPixel's REST API. Let me also back up. I know I just kind of went right into a thing I was not actually going to work on. In case we do have anybody new or catching this in the future, CircuitPython is the project, which, CircuitPython was one of those options on EDU blocks. Like I said, that's how I became aware of it. CircuitPython is the main thing that I typically work on stream, although occasionally we do some other stuff. CircuitPython is an implementation of Python that will run on these tiny computers called microcontrollers. The idea is that you plug these devices into your computer with a thumb drive. They'll show up, with a USB cable, I should say. They'll show up like a thumb drive on your computer, just with a couple of files on there. You open up the code file on that thumb drive, and then you can just save Python code inside there, and the microcontroller will execute the code inside of that, text Python code file. So there's all different shapes and sizes of these devices. Each one has got different, capabilities and peripherals built in, as well as, different amounts of pins and things to hook up other devices to interact with. The common thread for all the devices on this page, the 404 devices here, are that they all support CircuitPython. So that is kind of broadly what I typically work on, stuff related to CircuitPython in one way or another. Today it will be the HTTP server library and some NeoPixels, which are just one of the names for RGB LEDs. And the goal is to build out essentially the REST API that I've mapped out here. I essentially have notes with the endpoint, a very, very brief description of what it does, and then a bulleted list with the inputs that it takes. And this is all that I have so far, but this is quite a bit. So we'll start coding up the REST API from this and just kind of build it and test it out. I don't have device plugged in yet. Let's do that. It's not the, what? That is the IP we want, but it's not actually listening. The light, honestly, the amount of light kind of overwhelms it. We could try this, and you can't really see the light as well, so we'll try to chunk the brightness down a bit, and that will make it a little easier to see, but unfortunately, it's just tricky business to be capturing RGB LEDs with camera, streaming them out to the world, especially the camera I have, which happens to be just an old cell phone. So we're gonna actually grab the latest and greatest, and even so latest that it's not actually even released yet. We're gonna be working with the PR version of HTTP server. So this will be some more testing on this front as well. Just because this has got loads of great features that we are gonna find helpful. Things like JSON response, things like authentication. I would like to have optional authentication where you have to pass a certain token to the server in order to be able to control the NeoPixels. Also got inputs and outputs with JSON, so we can send it data in a structured way. We can read that data inside there, react upon it, do stuff with it. So this will be, it's really nice at doing what it does, but this will also be a chance to continue testing it out some more. And I probably, well, I think maybe there's new commits. I think this won't let me just update like this. Oh, there's commits in main as well. Interesting. Let's update there. So I think this branch won't let me just, yeah, I can't just update that. So we'll go GHB list. This will grab the latest one for me. Oh. Yeah, there we go. Files changed. A lot of refactoring in the responses, I think, since the last time I messed with this one. So we will go ahead and just take the latest version, get that over on our device. Just delete the old one. Paste in the new one. And this code that's on there is actually a little bit similar. It actually does have a REST API for controlling some of the NeoPixels, but it also includes an API for controlling the marquee text, as well as an HTML page that serves as a front end that allows you to control those things. Some of which we don't necessarily want. The marquee stuff I'll be getting rid of, and the way that the NeoPixels work is going to change to be more generalized. This one is very much hard-coded for kind of the exact setup that it has. But we can start with basically shell of it. One thing that's different for sure, we're not going to have the segment thing, so we can just get rid of that. Delete everything that's now broken. I do still need to make the PR for that one. This will leave, we're going to probably keep the same idea of the context here. It's telling us the mode. Ultimately, we'll want to support multiple strands as well, so this will need to get a little bit more complex because it will need to be like the mode for, you know, NeoPixel strip 1 or whatever is this, and maybe the mode for NeoPixel strip 2 is different, right? So we'll eventually need to be capturing that kind of stuff. Server poll, that's going to stay there. We don't need any clear marquee. Don't need anything to do with segments. I'll keep this for now, but it's going to change. I'll keep animation as well, but same thing there. It's going to end up changing. Not sure what the delays are for. Are these used? Usage. I don't know that we need the start. I think, I don't know why we would have start. Different. I don't know, maybe we were just printing out times at some point. I don't really have clear memory of why there's a start variable. Usually that would go along with an end variable. Well, one of two things. It would either go along with an end variable and we would print some time like, hey, doing this action took this amount of time, or we would be checking against, we'd be updating the time to like a now variable inside the main loop and then checking it against however long we wanted to wait in order to do something. Neither of those seem to be happening in this case, so no, exactly. We'll just leave it for now, though. We can, I think, we're just going to go ahead and get rid of the animation setup. Because eventually, once we do get into animations, we're going to have a more generalized way to handle them. I'll even just go ahead and delete this stuff. We can always grab it back from this code file over here, which is now a copy. Let's get rid of sequence. Can you get rid of this? Text mode, I was calling it grid versus animation. I think we are going to change the terminology there. Animation, I think, is good for the mode when it is animating. But instead of grid, I think we're going to go with just like maybe colors or pixels. I think I like pixels. How's it going, DJ Devin? Good morning. Pixels. Current text, that was also for the marquee, so we're not going to have that. I do want to add some things to this that are going to start out as empty, but will eventually fill in with our stuff. So I'm going to call... Well, so for one thing, I'm going to kind of try to grab some of this stuff just kind of off the cuff out of my brain. So we may end up going back and changing the names and the terminology of some stuff, but I'll just kind of go with the flow and see where it gets, where the pain points are with the names I select, and then maybe change them from there. So I think what I'm going to do is refer to one or more neopixels connected to a pin as a strip. So we're going to have 0 to many strips. You will be allowed to configure however many strips you would like. Most basic case, well, the most basic case would be 0, but that's not very interesting. The real most basic case would be 1, but you'll be able to have more if you'd like. Each strip is gonna have an ID and a value which will represent, this will be probably the object, the NeoPixel object, after it has been initialized. And its ID, I think it's going to be optional. You can either choose your own ID, so you could name this something like, you know, NeoPixel Featherwing, if you wanted to go full on like human readable name. Or you can just leave the default, which is going to be basically the pins that it is connected to, because that will make it unique. So if you were initializing a NeoPixel strip on pin D6 and you don't provide a custom name, then it's going to initialize it with the name or the ID of D6. And then from then on, you're going to use that ID when you want to send another request to tell it to do something. And these are all going to exist inside of this dictionary. However, we're not going to start out with D6 by default. We're actually going to get rid of all this. We're going to get rid of all this. Yeah. I'll keep these for now, but ultimately these are probably going to get deleted as well. Okay, so we're going to start with the, we'll just comment this out for now. We're going to get back, animations are going to come after pixel mode, so we're going to be doing mode pixels first, which is just setting the neopixels individually. Or doing fill, I guess, right? You could do multiples at once. It doesn't have to be individual, but not using the animation. And so first things first, we need to initialize the pixels, which means we want this endpoint here for initializing a pixel strip. A neopixel strip, specifically, because we'll eventually support dot stars also. This is going to take a post request. And I am going to do a pin/true on all of mine. I don't know why it's not suggesting it. Should it be init neopixels? Should it be init neopixel strip? Let's go to neopixels. Stars, I think, should be this as well. even if it's only a single one, I think it makes the most sense to refer to it as the plural there. Init neopixels. It's going to take our request object. We want to get the data out of it. And then we are expecting the data to have, roughly speaking, these arguments. Batch and watch the beginning of the stream real quick. Not sure what REST API is. I don't think I've ever used it. Is it a specific protocol, type of coding, or framework? Yeah, really good question. I can tell you, you most certainly have in this case. A REST API, all that means is just HTTP requests, making GET requests and POST requests and things like that. So your examples in the HTTP requests library, like the ones with, you did Twitch and it's several of them, I think, right? Let's see, Steam. All the ones in that, all those examples in that library, those are interacting with a REST API. So the Steam REST API is what allowed you to do this one. Mastodon REST API. There's probably a more specific meaning. Broadly speaking, though, REST API, as far as I'm aware, it just means like HTTP gets and posts and puts and these things. Wow, why did they choose such a really bright? Conforms to the design principles of the REST or representational state transfer architectural style. RESTful. I guess the idea is about the API essentially representing state. This doesn't do a great job of like telling us kind of just in plain English. I don't know. Yeah, somebody's probably got a much better definition than I do, but essentially it boils down in my brain to HTTP API with gets and posts and things like that that allow you to either get the current state or update the state to a new state within some third-party thing, whether it's a web service like Steam or Mastodon or anything like that, or in our case, our third-party thing actually will just be the CircuitPython device and its neopixels connected. HTTP stateless API, as opposed to one that uses sessions or continued connection. Interesting. It's not considered a REST API if it has sessions? Every time you trigger or get a thing with a crafted, specify a REST API. Or you mean, I guess maybe you mean a session like keeping an open connection like WebSockets or something. You don't necessarily maybe not mean a session in the, like an authenticated session where you would have a token and a cookie or something like that. You'd be sending it along with every request. The backend would be checking your token and that would count you as authenticated whenever you make that request. That's sometimes referred to as a session too, but I think that's not what you're talking about the more I put it in my head here. So our incoming data is the required items are the pin, I should say. Well, for dot stars, it's multiples, but for neopixels, we'll do first. You have to have the pin, you have to have the pixel count. Is there a default color order? If there's a default color order, then I'll just say that it's optional. MQTT I considered kind of a stateful. Use it differently than, yeah. MQTT definitely also different through the protocol is different. Kind of like keeping an open connection more so, I think. Although MQTT is a bit of a mystery to me. WebSockets I'm a little bit more familiar with, at least as far as like usage. The NeoPixel GitHub I want. This one. We could look at the example here, I guess, as well, but it's when you init. Defaults to none. Yeah, so I think that's fine. We allow it to not be passed then, I think, as long as it will let you initialize when it's none. So for optional, or let's do required ones with asterisk. Brightness, so that's optional. Name is optional. The right's optional. All of the rest of these are optional. So these are the two required, pin and pixel count. So let's, very first thing, let's just check and make sure both of those required arguments are present. Let's try to make it in a slightly more general way. Let's say required args is pin pixel count for arg in required args if arg not in request object dot keys. Let's go missing args is an empty list to start with. For each one of these that we find, we go missing args append arg. After we're done with this, if missing args has anything inside of it, we're going to return the error basically like this. It will be JSON, it will be bad request, success false, error, missing required arguments. Missing args. TO. There it is. Let's use the sessions and cookies. I think the point is that it doesn't. Yeah, I may have bungled the definition, or I may just believe certain things are REST that aren't technically. That's definitely very possible. I don't have like formal training on REST. Giving time-limited cookie to open a session is still considered it formally. I gotcha. Okay. So if your token, if you have it like in an argument in the URL or in a path in the URL, as opposed to like the header in a cookie or somewhere. Let's see here. So we will return this. Is it still set to print, or I guess we got to it kind of late, didn't we? Ah, yeah, there we go. Okay. Open the browser I want. Good. However, it did serve the static file, which is inside static in here. Is not actually what we want. In this case, we're just going to disable static. I think there's a thing on here to do, but I don't remember now how to do it. Oops. Root path. The routes are just that. There we go. Okay, that's actually the root path right there. which case I actually will just want none. That will not serve null page. A 404 on index, which I think is fine. Eventually, maybe we'll make the index page return a docs page of API. Send the first request, and then actually pretty quick right away, I'm going to start building in authentication to these as well, optionally. I guess I forgot how that attaches. Maybe that's actually at the server level, not the function level. I'm not sure. In order to test this out, I'm gonna make a directory neopixel guy tests. Your request. Failed to respond. None type has no keys. If rec is none. Can you extend functions? Does that make any sense? I would love a way to not copy paste. Well, so required arguments, that's different. That's going to be different for each endpoint. But checking this for none, returning an error, and then looping over the required arguments and returning the error if any of them were missing, I would like to refactor all of this. Pass it the request, we pass it the arguments. If that's none, we return the response. So then in here we would go validate request, required args. And then actually, since that doesn't return, that is actually pretty convenient. So response will get created off of request, which is already the correct object. So, but we do need to know whether or not we should do more stuff afterwards. So I guess we want to return true if this was valid and false if it was not. True if we made it all the way to there. And then for each of these, I guess we would return false. So then we would then be going if that's true, then we go on, else if it's false. Don't do anything else. Let's return a success if we do make it that far. Doesn't matter if it's URL or header to pass. What matters is each request is technically independent. Makes it easier to use than most alternatives since there's no need for a complex client using sockets or anything, just call the URLs. On the other hand, it's purely client initiated, so there's no getting push. That's true, yeah. Need WebSockets or something that can push data. Or the closest thing, I guess, in the HTTP land would be long polling is kind of like technology designed for that, although it's like kind of a rudimentary one because it essentially amounts to just make the request and wait forever while it takes forever to respond. That response body is empty. 405 method not allowed. Method not allowed. We're actually getting inside of there. I think I waited long enough. Response object has no exit. Maybe I'm not allowed to return from there or something. No exit. Gotta assume that means maybe I'm not allowed to return from inside there. Ew. Let's look at the examples. Maybe the way that you are supposed to make the response changed. Ah, indeed. All right, let's see if anything uses JSON response, because I did see that one. CPU information and methods. Okay. This does mean we need to refactor the way that that validate function works a little bit. Because now the way that we return responses is just different. So we will need not this stuff, not this. Oh, I can't have it folded if I... Like get post, simple to work with, yeah. wonder if there's a way we could teach this. It's not supposed to be actually, or lib. How do we make the status? Probably that's like the union tuple int string. Okay. We can't return false anymore. And yeah, it's a bit awkward, but I think what I'm gonna go with is return none, and then I guess we'll say if that is not none, then we just return, ooh, right, we need to get the response though. So error response equals this. If it's not none, then we just return it. And then if it is none, then we go on, because that means that we were actually successful. Int is not iteratable. And 30 validate on response. But because of my status. It's because of my status. Huh? Oh, it has to be either a status object or a tuple of int string. Code and text? I just get to make my own text, or? Actually was a 200 though still. Defaults to OK200. I want to just use this actually, although that's what I sending. That's what I was sending. Oh, I didn't do it on the right one. That'll do it. There we go. 400 bad request. Success was false. Error was missing required JSON body. So we can go and add that. Why I cannot tab here, but that's weird. Put a key and a value. Now we no longer are missing the body. Instead, we're missing required arguments of missing args, which is not particularly helpful. That was meant to be the list of things, but that's not an F string, so let's do that. How's it going, C. Grover? Good morning. Getting a late start. I actually was getting a little bit of a late start myself this morning. I was a couple minutes late. And then OBS was getting a little crazy on me. I wasn't sure if we were actually running for a few minutes there. Okay. Get the services. I can never. Why I think that request. Nice. There we go. So it tells us we're missing the required arguments pin and pixel count. Perfect. We added pin. You do it again, it should tell us just pixel count. Right. But yeah, no, I'm waiting for this to rerun, but it's not going to do that because obviously we didn't change it. There we go. Missing required 1 pixel count. So now it's like knowing and telling us if we got that wrong. Pixel count. I have. Can you do math in here? I have a 32. But I kind of think of it as 8 times 4, but I don't know if you're allowed to do math like that. X error in JSON. Oh. 32 on that one. But now this has crashed. Although we should not let that crash like that. Value error, that's in JSON on line 115. We should catch that. We don't want to crash the server if somebody sent us invalid JSON. Hit NeoPixels validate request. Surround with. Try accept. Was that a value error? Value error. Invalid JSON. So this is going to be nice because we can now reuse this function from all the rest of ours, and so we avoid duplicating all this logic, which will be really nice because we basically are going to want all of these same checks on every single one of these endpoints. Did it still crash? Feel like it was running the latest version? Yeah. We weren't running the latest version for some reason, but now we are. We got invalid JSON. Okay. So all of our functions are going to look sort of similar to this. For now, I am actually just going to copy this. Just to have a starting point on the next ones. And we'll put the meat of it in here. And for init neopixels, we would like to initialize a neopixel object on the specified pin using the specified pixel count. One thing is we need to get the pins by name as a string. Can you do... Is that a thing? No. Python access field as string name. From string name? Get adder. Or has adder? Has adder. Adder. Nice. Cool. Okay. We could start the server, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to save the file and restart it anyway. So another thing that we could do is validate that the pin is actually a valid pin. However, that should not be inside validate request because validate request is like the generic validations for all requests. We want our specific to this endpoint validations to come after that. So let's say if not has adder board. Ooh, right. We want to get this. Let's return that. And then this will be different. Instead of is not none, this is going to be is instance. If it's a JSON response, return it. Yeah, this is like type juggling or whatever. This is bad because like sometimes it's a generic object dictionary thing and sometimes it's a response. It's not ideal, I think, but for now, that's what I'm going to do. As adder. Then we'll be getting that back out of... Yeah, right. But then this is now error response or rec data. It's a bit awkward, but so then here I'm going to go rec data. Because if we made it to here, then we know that it's that. Now we go if not has adder rec data in. We're going to return an error. Valid pin. Go ahead and tell them the pin they gave us as well. Yeah, technically inside of here we know that it's the error response, but I'm not going to bother making another variable in there. Okay, so we should be able to run this, pass it a bogus pin, and get an error back. Yeah, sometimes it gets to the state where it's not restarting. I've noticed this on my device. JSON. JSON. Okay, that time we got success. That's a real pin. Let's go. Let's go. It probably does have a NeoPixel pin even. Let's go. 3, 4. Valid pin D634. Cool. All right, so if we make it past that, we know that it's a valid pin. We can start and actually initializing our pixels. Oh, one thing we want is strip ID equals. So what we want is it's going to be, if they passed it, then we're going to take the one they passed. And if they didn't, then we're going to use the pin. So let's say what we'll do is rec data pin if should I call it name or ID? I think I should probably call it ID. Inside of here I said name, but then every time here I called this identifier and then I said name or pin. We're actually going to call that ID. Let's go lowercase. So if ID, we're going to use pin if ID is not in the rec data, else we're going to use the ID. Technically, we should probably also check and make sure that we have not already initialized it. Unresolved reference rec data. Reason it's not this right here, rec data. My ternary thing is wrong. Can I seriously just not use rec data? No, okay, I can use rec data. Ternary is probably wrong somehow. Alright, well, I'm just gonna not get fancy with it. We'll just do the good old-fashioned if statement. If ID is not in rec data, strip, let's go, strip equals none. Pin. We're not supposed to have is. Yeah, is probably wrecked us there. Honestly, I kind of prefer this version anyway. It takes more lines, takes more space, but I feel like this version makes it more clear what it's doing anyway when you're reading it. Scripts. We need to make sure that we have not already initialized it. So let's say if well, we need to do that either way, actually. Yeah, we need to do that either way. So let's determine the strip ID first and foremost. And then after we have determined the strip ID, we can say if strip ID is already in context strips, give them an error. Strip ID is already initialized. All right, if we make it past that, then I think we're actually ready to initialize it. I like to check all of my error cases first. This way, by the time we get to the end and we actually send a request where it does the thing, we will know that each and every step kind of along the way we're successfully bailing out on. We do need to do a little bit more though, because right now we're not actually putting anything into strips. So we can't actually test this until we've done that. So we are gonna say, I'm gonna go underscore pixels, just because this is gonna obviously get called every time this it's a request, so it's not going to stick around, or it is going to stick around, but it's going to go inside of our context. Pixel pin, that is going to be get adder board with rec data in num pixels. That's going to be rec data pixel count. Brightness, I'm going to leave like that for now. Auto write, I am actually just not going to pass. Pixel order, I'm not going to pass. Then we're going to go context, strips, strip ID, pixels. So that should initialize the strip and put it onto context strips. And then if we were to call it again, it would tell us that it's already initialized. Let's make sure that works. And at this point, we won't actually get to see any pretty pixels lit up. Yeah, we're definitely doing this thing where we're not restarting anymore. All right, so we got success true the first time. Nice. Strip D6 already initialized. Cool. Okay. So we will still want to have the rest of these arguments and pass those through. Should we do that now, or should we make pixels so that we can actually light something up? Let's make pixels so that we can actually light something up, because until we can light something up, we can't really test if any of the rest of this stuff worked anyway. So for pixels, I would like a endpoint slash pixels, which can be either a get or a post. If you send it a get, then you will also, if you send it a get, then you can't give it the ID though. So maybe it should be pixels slash strip ID like this. Of course, then if you did a space, you'd be a little bit SOL. We could have it to where you use post in order to fetch the data, but that feels backwards. We could just make a separate endpoint for getting, although I kind of like the idea of having one endpoint that you get you send it a GET request in order to get data out of it. You send it a POST request or a PUT request to save data into it. Yeah, let's do it like this. We'll see if we run into any issues with that. We'll do it like that for now. You go pixels / your strip ID. That's how you're actually going to get the identifier is in there. And then if it's a POST request, then you can have a body. And in that case, you'll be sending JSON with a dictionary of pixel indexes to colors. If it's a GET request, then of course you won't have a body. You'll just send a GET request to there. It will get you the current colors that are set on the pixels. I don't remember how to do the path variables. Okay, actually I had it right with the with these things. All right, I'm gonna start with this. Oh, you know what? Our validate request. I guess that only really matters for the put, I mean like the non-get requests, I should say. It only matters for the ones that have a body. Maybe we should say validate request body. Validate request data. Request data. Let's do that. This will actually be a bit different when it's a GET request. Tell people they can't have a space. It's not required underscore. Yeah, that's true. I mean, you could probably do like %20 or something. Probably encode it or something. We're gonna call this def pixels we will need to check if it's a GET request or not. If request.method equals, that's pretty straightforward. If it's a post, we're gonna do this, and we'll figure out what the required arguments are in a minute. Elif. If it's a get, we want to first make sure the strip ID they gave us actually has already been initialized. If it's not in strips, then we return an error. Strip. It's not initialized. Now we need to get this out. Get past it here. Do we need to check separately for none? I don't know. I don't know, because if you don't put anything there, it might, I don't think it would match with this URL, so not sure. Strip ID is not in that. We return the error that says the strip's not initialized. Should be enough to test. I'm gonna go make a new one of these for basically just make one of these for each endpoint. Okay, strip D6 not initialized. If we initialize it first, then we get a response successful. Okay. Let's see. If we make it past there, that means the strip does exist, and in that case, what we want to do is return an object which has a list of all the pixels and their current color. I don't think I quite got around to getting NeoPixels colors back out in this one. So let's go strip colors is a list. For I in range length strips strip ID strip colors dot append context strips strip ID I turn success true pixels strip colors. Long list. There are only 32 in this case. Not that long. There are some strips with a lot more though, for sure. It still failed the first time. Realize it, then we can get it. Are? I have an easy way to count, but should be 32 there. In this case, they're all still set to black, so that's not very interesting. We haven't actually turned any of the pixels on yet. Although, are on. They are not black. Are we on the right in D6? Is that what those are connected to? It is. I guess, I mean, it's because we haven't. It's because we haven't set them to anything. It's very weird, actually, that it doesn't know that they're on. I would have expected when you would get the data back out of it like this, it would know the current color, but it doesn't work like that. Since these didn't get set on this instance of the object, they're from back before. You know what we should do actually though is as part of initializing, we should actually fill it with 0. Go pixels.fill 0 to turn it off. That way, if it was in a dirty state before you initialize it, once you initialize it, it will go to a known state where everything is off, and the get request will match what is physically showing. I think is really what I intend. Off now. Eventually, it might be nice if you could specify whether you want hex versus RGB. But for now, I'm just going to leave this like that. And it's good enough for now. Let's work on our post request here. With 0, then it won't have memory of the last state before the power off. I mean, it already doesn't have memory of the last state, but it was able to keep them on for some reason. Like, basically, the code didn't know what color the pixels were actually showing. I don't think we want to write anything to a text file, because then we'd have to have bootpy with storage enabled and all that stuff. I don't necessarily want to do that. And in this case, I don't want it to go back to what they were. Once you initialize it, I think it should clear whatever it had before. I don't actually want to keep what was there. Most of this back on, but our required stuff is going to be different. So we're already getting the strip ID here, so we won't need the strip ID. Really our only required argument, I guess, would be pixels, I think. Pixels is going to be... it's going to be a dictionary technically, but it's going to be a dictionary where the keys are integers that start on 0 and count up, so it's going to feel a lot like a list. In fact, I guess it probably could just be a list. But I do actually want it to be a dictionary instead of a list, because that will allow you to set a single pixel or multiple pixels without specifying the entire list, which I definitely do want that. That needs to be a tuple though. Pixels don't turn off when the code stops. Color can be set in list elements. Save the state. It could be another API call. It's in VM. We could have an API call for saving the state. I wouldn't be opposed to that. It's a good idea. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it by default, but you could maybe put it into a mode where it's like remember the state. Can't read the pixels, they don't have bidirectional protocol. You can only read the buffer. Ah, okay, that's why it doesn't know about what was set by the animation beforehand. Image load. Yeah, I mean, eventually we could have an API that says like save current state or something, and you call that API and then it grabs the current state and puts it into some kind of long-term storage. I'd be okay with having something triggered by the user. Like if you tell it to save the state, I'm down with that. I don't have it in my list here, but it would be an interesting idea. I'll have a clear idea for it, but let's go save state ? Since we have more to figure out. That would be cool though, if you could tell it like, hey, you know, in your take the current state you have right now and just serialize it, put it somewhere where you can access it again later, and then the next day or the next week or whatever, you could come back to it and be like, hey, remember that state that I had you saved before? Go ahead and recall that now and put it onto the pixels. Why is this mad? Validate requests unresolved. Right, that's because it was commented out when we did our refactor. Okay. All right, if it's a post, we get to here, we look for pixels. Let's go pixels. Oh, let's go pixels. Pixels input data. I don't know. It's kind of weirdly. Maybe we'll change it. Like I said, I'm gonna just try to flow and get it out. Pixels input data. That's gonna be equal to rec data, which we don't have set up yet. Yeah, this is the old one actually. So I should have updated this. But I didn't. It's totally. When we copy it next time, it'll have stuff. Like a bitmap. Yeah, kind of. I mean, we could save it as a bitmap if we wanted to, literally. If it is instance error, so yeah, we return the error if it's that. We don't need this stuff anymore. Pass anymore. Made it to there, we do this. We still don't have rec data for some reason. I think that's because we didn't copy this line. There we go. Pixels input. Rec data pixels. Can you is instance multiple? That's tuple. Okay, hopefully we can. Pixels. Pixels must be list or dictionary. Okay, if we make it past there, then we want to basically grab the code from in here. Mode. We will go ahead and set the mode, actually. We haven't really done anything with mode yet. I'm gonna call it mode pixels, not mode grid, though. For key in rec data pixels. Keys, we're not going to do pixels, we're going to go context strips strip ID. Int of key equals rec data pixels key. So basically the key is going to be, it actually does have to be a dictionary, doesn't it? Not a list in this case. Yeah, let's do that. So it will feel like a list because, I mean, it could feel like a list if it were full because it could have keys, you know, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way to 31 in our case. In which case it will basically behave kind of like a list, but technically it's dictionary as well. So you could just send it, you know, key 17 or whatever and a color, and then it will only set one neopixel. So we go loop over all of our pixels. We go get our strips, the specific strip we want. We're going to set the pixel that's at index of key. The color we're going to set it to is the data that we got from recdata pixels key. Pixels.show. Let's turn that off for now. I think that kind of depends on auto show, which we left for default, which I think is on by default, but eventually we'll deal with auto show more specifically. This is the wrong kind of error. Let's fix that. It's the old style. Whoa. False error. X error. E. Oh. Huh, that's annoying. X error on key cur key request. If we make it all the way to the very end of all of that, then we're actually just going to return the success. And just say success true. We don't even need anything else. All right, so if we do this right, we should be able to send it a post with a dictionary that has indexes and then color values, in this case, integer values. Hopefully we're allowed to use hex. And then that's going to set the color on our pixels. Catch up on the chat here as well. Big of a script you want. Depending on the matrix size, treat them as, yeah, put a bitmap. Not sure how big of a script you want or the use case, but bitmap saver board in it. Layout for neopixel strips. Kind of interesting. I don't have enough neopixels to draw anything particularly fancy or interesting on display, I don't think. It's involving into a huge DMA Christmas light show. Ramp up pretty easily. Neopixel displays, my attempts at using them as a frame buffer sat in display were met with complications. Controllers with GUI. Yeah, Scorpio I think would be a good board for this. I have one of those. I think I've not actually busted it out and hooked it up to neopixels yet. We definitely want something like that though that can go super fast if you're going to be trying to an actual display. Different perspective on Nest games. Okay, so let's see if this works. We would need to initialize our strip first. And then we should be able to get request in order to get the current colors, but those are all currently off. We should be able to post request the same URL with some data pixels dictionary that has, I don't know why I cannot tab. It really bothers me. I really like the use of the tab key. Real though, why not tab? Charm HTTP client tab. Broken tab key. Tabbing it. Work you can't type. It's no look. Blah. Anything else here? Upload this or something as I can. Disappointing. 17 and then maybe like green. It's kind of how this is intended to work. Although I don't know if these are actually allowed to be ints. I have no idea if we're allowed to actually use hex or not, so hopefully so. Wait. Camera. Nope. Invalid. Not allow hex. Do strings then, I guess. Like, if you were making your request from a programming language, like if I was writing a Python script and using the requests module, in Python I'm allowed to do hex and it will get converted to ints when it gets passed. This HTTP client here, though, doesn't have that functionality. Nothing will convert it from that hex back to an int, so therefore it's not allowed to send. It would be nice. I mean, I guess what we should do is like check if it's a string or not. All right, let's get in here and let's say let's get the data is instance int. That's when we do this. Elif string. How do we convert a string hex to a number hex? HTML colors would be nice as well, yeah, I believe. Definitely. Int 0. Let's get this out. Let's go cur value. It starts with a hashtag. Place the hashtag with 0x. If it doesn't start with the hashtag, then just leave it alone. And then we go int for value 0? Why is it comma 0? That seems weird. I guess because it's base 10. Oh. Oh, okay. If you don't have 0x, then you need to tell it base 16. If you have 0x... What is the 0, though? Why 0? I'm not going to base 0. To base 10. Weird. 16 for base 16. I'm gonna try like this. It seems like, based on this code, it seems like this will work, but wrong. It would be good to have like a full path or something. Full path. Or we init, then post. Pretty sure I can do more than one in here, but I don't know how. Requests. Tell me how to do that. I was actually on the right track. Seemed like... Oh, those are messages, though. I don't want messages. does not say on this. Hashtags. It's comments. Does it know the, but it would it know the body's over? Oh. About to give up on this and just use requests to learn a new syntax. This? Yeah. There we go. Got red and green with pixel 17 and pixel 13. 17 is green. Yeah, making sense because it's 8 wide, so 0 through 7, 8 through 15, 16, 17 is green. 14, 13 is red. Cool, so that works, and then theoretically we should be able to do hashtag instead. Nice, they changed locations because I gave them different numbers this time, but that works now as well with the hashtag. I think 0 is just to ignore the base argument. Okay. I want to allow base 10. I don't. Well, base 10 will work just by being a number. I don't really want to allow a string with base 10, I will say. If you want to pass base 10, you should pass an int instead of a string. Would be my take. Not having thought about it all that much, truthfully, so reserve the right to change my mind, but off the top of my head, I think that's how I think. Okay. Cool. So all of this is working. I don't want this. We should be able to get some stuff after it, actually. So let's add a GET request to this. We should be able to get the same data that we set in it. In fact, we should get back pixel 21 is this color and pixel 8 is that color. I will say, I guess the return being a list is maybe not the best. Maybe we should make the return a dictionary the same way as what you give it. Yeah, I think I would like to change that to not be a list, because it makes it difficult. You have to count through the indexes to know what's what. I'm gonna go strip colors actually is gonna be a dictionary instead, and then instead of append, we're gonna do I equals. We'll restart. We'll test, which now includes the get also. Okay, let's close. Shift F10. Actually read all this stuff. Really tell you which one is which. I guess maybe it's not printing the response either. You have to go inside the file or maybe click into here. Interesting. So we should be expecting to find 21 set to green and 8 set to red. Nice. Nice. 31 is the highest one because we start on 0. Cool. Multiplex out to 1080p. 25. Just need a, what, 5x5 grid or something? All right, that is basically doing what we want. That pretty much covers getting and setting pixels to individual colors. One thing I will say, I guess, that's weird is that it doesn't return it back to you in the format that you give it in. I think I would like to be able to get the... I think I would like to be able to have these be hex. That way you could take the output of this, modify it, and then feed it back in, and everything would still work. I guess you could argue maybe we should support these as well. Actually, these might just work, honestly. I think these might work. We would need a check for it. Need one more of this, I think. People or list. I think maybe this actually does work. 100% positive? I mean, I guess it can't really be a tuple because tuples don't exist in JSON. $55,025. Oh, the camera died. I was like, it does not look like it worked. Truth is, it did actually work. But the camera could not handle the pinkness. Yeah, to cover 25 of them. Need that to be product picker. Cool. So that's kind of nice that that's actually just supported pretty much without doing too much extra work. So we could actually feed the same data back into it. However, I would still, I think, like a way to get hex out of it instead of the lists. What we would do though, would we do like a slash hex up there? I mean, I'd hate to duplicate all of everything in here. Make a different... No, we could do a get request argument. Like that. That's what I want to go for, actually. Do get requests. Request.query_params.get. Okay, so we say or RGB, that means if it's none, I assume it's going to be none if that didn't get passed. We're going to do RGB. If we're RGB, we do that. If we are hex, we do this. RGB to hex. We need to make that function. And by we need to make that function, what I mean is that function exists somewhere. Don't need to write it. Find it and put it into here. That's actually going to return an int. And we're not going to want int. We're actually going to want strings. Oh, that was where we were before. But since it was purple, maybe that was what we wanted. Way around. Or hex int to string. Yeah, that's just the wrong way. I guess it's because int2 is so close to in2. Our function. Oh, I'm not. X. and these are still valid format, you could go ahead and pass these back in and it would still work. Need a lot of HDMI plugs. Oh, some kind of combiner, I guess. Okay. I'm pretty good so far. I think I'm probably gonna call it a day for now. We pretty much knocked out the first two. Well, they're not in order, I guess. We knocked out initialize NeoPixel and then pixels. However, I will say we did not go back and do optional arguments yet, so we need to do that still. But that covers a lot of the functionality right there. And I definitely am liking the way that the API is turning out with regards to, like, it's very versatile. This is gonna kind of like, this would allow you to interface to other things very easily. Like if you want to use NeoPixels in some other project, you want to have a web server that triggers a red or a green light or something like that, this will kind of let you very easily do that without having to worry about any of the custom code. Coming together nicely. I'm going to head out for now. Hope everybody has a good rest of your day today and a good weekend and all that stuff. Let's see. I will be back probably, I should be back at some point on Monday. We'll stream a bit, working on some CircuitPython reviews and things probably. Yeah, if you want to get notifications when I do stream, you can follow me over on Twitch, foamyguy_Twitch. I may pop in and do some Vue.js stuff. If that's the thing that interests you, then hit me up somewhere and let me know. Otherwise, I don't know, I may just stick offline and do it. But I am doing a bit of like a Vue basic tutorial essentially to try to get up and running. So I'll be doing that at some point. I may pop on the stream. I don't know for sure. Anyway, though, hope everyone does enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for interacting in the chat, asking questions, leaving comments, stuff like that. Appreciate all of you. I will see you all next time.